Right, it's time that we talked about a really great pragmatist philosopher, Richard Rorty. Here's the book, Philosophy, Social Hope. So I'm doing a series on different pragmatists, and my name is David Boje, and this is how I got my start, And I want you to look at this picture. The Western World Development Tract 8271. It looks just like where I live in New Mexico, It's quite interesting that they chose this as the book cover because, what Richard Rorty is doing is quite revolutionary in terms of pragmatism. First of all, he objects to the term American pragmatism because why should it just be American? Is this some kind of colonial project? Is it imperialism again and again? No, he says it's an international movement, and there are some people he really respects and some people he's quite questionable about. So he really likes John Dewey because he believes that Dewey approaches this in a way where it's about not just the experience that William James puts forth in his version of pragmatism, and not just the science of it that Charles Sanders Peirce focuses on in some of his works. Now, for Richard Rorty, he's concerned that we've made too much of the Godhead. Donna Haraway talks about that taken the Kantian position and even out of Plato that there's some kind of exterior up there, heavenly world, right? And we don't have to pay much attention down here because all of our ethical rules are written in the commandments up high. So I'm not here to debate religion with you, but you're probably putting in a lot of comments anyway. But the whole thing is Richard Rorty wanted an approach of hope, and he saw a future for social democracy. So right there, I'm getting more comments. But what he's talking about is he doesn't believe that we can get this idealism that is talked about by Plato, that you go beneath the appearances and get realism, and if you get people into dialogue, then they can reach some kind of agreement politically. Well, we know today that that's just bullshit. They're not reaching agreement. They're not even close to consensus, which Rorty talks about. I prefer to Rorty, because since I am a pragmatist myself, the work of Mikhail Bakhtin, not technically a pragmatist, but his work on polyphony and being that person like Jane Addams, if you've seen the Jane Addams feminist version of pragmatism I did. By the way, Richard Rorty doesn't mention him, but Richard Rorty does a lot of good things. So if we don't have this ability to have a consensus, then polyphony, standing in our own voice, in our own true self, in our authenticity, and talking about what we believe, what we want, what we see the future is, and voting with our conscience. That's what Richard Rorty was talking about. Now, consensus is bullshit. It's all groupthink. People, if you could see the groupthink going on in our Congress now. The Republicans vote one way, the Democrats vote another way. It's not really about what's good for the society or what's good for the United States. It's a power play. And so Richard Rorty is what's called a critical theorist, a critical pragmatist, and that's what I am. Now, I don't agree with him that there's no spirituality, and I don't think I'm going to stand at the pearly gates. I practice Jainism myself. It's kind of like Buddhism, and I believe in karma, and I believe people got to pay for the karma they create here. So that's some of my perspectives. So at the end of the video, I'll show you a link to the website, togetherstorying.com. That's where I collect pragmatist videos I make, and also pragmatist software, how to restore your life using some of the ideas of Richard Rorty, using some of the ideas of Jane Addams, particularly John Dewey. Now, Rorty favors John Dewey. I favor Charles Sanders Peirce more, and I do induction, deduction, abduction, because I agree with him that we need some science with integrity to question the facts, question the principles, have some doubt about the principles. So I even doubt principles I've written about in my own books with myself and co-authors. So if you want to do that, go to togetherstorytelling.org. Thank you very much. Let's see the film I put together. Wrote the script, tweaked it a bit. Hope you like it. Thank you.
All right, let's dive into the work of one of the 20th century's most influential and honestly most controversial philosophers, Richard Rorty. Now, Rorty didn't just question philosophical ideas, he took a wrecking bell to the very purpose of philosophy itself. But he also offered a new path forward, one built not on absolute certainty, but on social hope. So for this explainer, we're drawing from his collection of essays, Philosophy and Social Hope. And really, to get a handle on his radical ideas, the best way is to follow the path he himself took, a personal quest that started when he was just a kid. This quote, "This is the key to everything." It's the core of his lifelong project. See, as a young man, Rorty was trying to unite two huge, separate parts of his world, the profound beauty of reality on one hand, and the urgent need for social justice on the other. He wanted to find one single, coherent way of looking at the world that could hold both. And that quest, well, it would define his entire career. To really help us understand this dilemma, Rorty gives us this powerful personal metaphor, the conflict between Trotsky and the wild orchids. And for him, this wasn't some abstract thought experiment. It was the defining tension of his youth. Okay, so on one side, you have Trotsky. Rorty grew up in a socialist family, and from a really young age, he believed the purpose of life was to fight injustice. That was his public duty. But then on the other side was his private passion, finding and identifying these incredibly rare wild orchids. This was a personal, deeply meaningful joy that felt completely separate from, and maybe even a little trivial compared to, the huge fight for social justice. How in the world could these two things possibly fit together? His first attempt to solve this puzzle was to do what so many deep thinkers do. He turned to traditional philosophy. He figured if he could just find a firm, unshakable foundation, a set of absolute truths, he could build a bridge between these two separate worlds. So, at just 15 years old, he goes off to the University of Chicago and dives headfirst into Plato. The old Socratic idea that virtue is knowledge was exactly what he was looking for. It basically promised that if he could just get wise enough, he could understand the ultimate nature of reality and justice and see how they were actually one in the same. He was searching for something eternal, something that wouldn't change. Now, Rorty's view of Platonism kind of evolved over time. He came to see it not just as Plato's specific ideas, but as this whole web of distinctions, appearance versus a deeper reality or mind versus matter. He argued that this entire framework set Western philosophy on a 2,000-year-long goose chase for certainty. But then, the quest started to fall apart. The more he read, the more he realized that philosophy wasn't some clear journey toward a single unified truth. It looked a lot more like a battlefield of brilliant thinkers, where each one started from their own set of first principles that were completely at odds with everyone else's. He basically hit a wall. There was no neutral territory, no objective referee to decide which philosopher's first principles were the right ones. The whole Platonic project, the very search that was supposed to unite Trotsky and the orchids, it just seemed like a complete dead end. This crisis is what led to the most important shift in his entire career. With the old way proving to be a dead end, he found a totally new path forward by turning to a uniquely American tradition, pragmatism. And this led Rorty to a really fundamental question. If philosophy isn't about discovering some timeless, objective truth out there, then what's the point? What is it actually good for? The answer he found, which was inspired by the philosopher John Dewey, was deceptively simple but absolutely revolutionary. He decided the job of a philosopher isn't to hold up a perfect mirror to the world. It's to help create new tools, new ways of talking and thinking that let us build a better, freer, and more just future. And this, right here, is the heart of Rorty's pragmatism. It's a complete change of direction. It swaps out that old goal, finding truth with a capital T, for a new, forward-looking one, human cooperation and progress. Philosophy suddenly becomes a creative, practical activity, not some kind of discovery mission. This is a great way to picture the fundamental shift. The old Platonic view saw language as a mirror that we needed to polish and polish until it perfectly reflected reality. Rorty said, no, that's the wrong metaphor entirely. Instead, think of words as tools. We don't ask if a hammer is a true representation of a nail, right? We ask if it's a useful tool for the job. To make this even clearer, Rorty uses a computer analogy. Think of your body as the hardware and your beliefs as the software programs running on it. We don't judge software by how accurately it mirrors the hardware. We judge it by how well it performs. So for a pragmatist, a true belief is simply one that works well. It's a tool that helps us cope with the world and achieve our goals. Now, as you can imagine, this idea that truth is about usefulness, not about matching some objective reality, was explosive. It sparked some intense criticism and misunderstanding that pretty much followed Rorty for the rest of his life. The most common charge you'll hear is that he was a relativist. His critics would argue, look, if there's no objective truth, then isn't every belief just as good as any other? Doesn't that mean anything goes? And Rorty spent decades pushing back hard against that interpretation. This chart really helps reframe the whole debate. Rorty argued that his critics were trapping him in the very vocabulary he was trying to escape. They'd label him a relativist. He'd say, no, I'm an anti-dualist. I'm rejecting that old appearance versus reality distinction. They'd call him a subjectivist. He preferred anti-foundationalist, arguing that beliefs don't need some ultimate foundation to be valid. For Rorty, the goal of any kind of inquiry, whether you're doing science or politics, isn't to find an objective truth. It's to achieve agreement. It's a social project aimed at coordinating our actions so we can reduce suffering and make life better for everyone. So, how does this new pragmatist vision actually resolve Rorty's original dilemma? How does it finally settle that clash between the public demands of Trotsky and the private passion for orchids? Well, Rorty's mature insight was this. The problem wasn't the answer, it was the question itself. He realized that the Platonic desire to weave his public duties and his private loves into one single grand theory, that was the original mistake. His solution then was to stop trying to force them together and instead give each one its own proper space. Our public life, he said, is the domain of solidarity, our shared ability to reduce the suffering of others. That's Trotsky. Our private life is the domain of self-creation, where we pursue our personal passions. That's the wild orchids. And crucially, neither one needs to justify the other. And this is the really hopeful takeaway from Rorty's whole journey. We don't need a guarantee from God or philosophy to ground our commitment to justice. We don't have to prove that preventing cruelty is objectively rational. Our fragile, historically developed sense of solidarity with other people, that is all the foundation we need. And for Rorty, that is enough. So in the end, this leaves us with the question that Rorty basically posed to the entire history of Western thought. What truly matters? Is it fostering human solidarity and trying to create a better future together? Or is it continuing the quest for knowledge of something absolute, timeless, and beyond the human? Rorty made his choice. The question he leaves for us is, what will ours be?
Go to togetherstorying.com and you can find more films about pragmatists, and try our new software where you can change your story in more of a pragmatist view. Rewrite it and rewrite it. It's free. Thank you very much.